It is late. The room is dark except for the pale glow of a screen. You are scrolling. Not because you are searching for anything important, not because you are truly resting, but because somewhere between exhaustion and habit, you drifted into the quiet ritual of watching other people become things. They are succeeding, launching, transforming, moving forward visibly. And quietly, almost invisibly, you begin measuring your own life against theirs. The distance feels personal, not circumstantial, not temporary, personal, as though other people possess some hidden quality that allows growth to belong naturally to them while remaining strangely inaccessible to you. Carol Dweck spent decades studying this psychological pattern in her book Mindset. She observed students, athletes, leaders, children, and professionals responding to challenge, uncertainty, and failure. And what she discovered changed the way psychologists understand growth itself. The people who adapted most successfully were not always the most intelligent, not always the most talented, not always the most naturally confident. The difference was often interpretation, the meaning people assigned to difficulty. Some interpreted struggle as evidence of limitation. Others interpreted struggle as evidence of development. And perhaps nowhere has this distinction become more important than in modern life. Because today, human beings are not merely navigating difficulty. They are navigating difficulty while surrounded constantly by comparison, distraction, performance, and the exhausting pressure to appear complete before they truly are. Perhaps the real danger of modern culture is not failure itself. Perhaps it is slowly becoming convinced that growth no longer belongs to you. Difficulty is not objective. That is one of the deepest insights within Dweck's research. Two people can experience the same setback and psychologically inhabit entirely different realities. One person encounters failure and experiences humiliation, exposure, judgment. The other encounters the same failure and experiences information, feedback, adaptation. The external event may be identical, but the interpretation reshapes the emotional experience completely. Dweck called these patterns fixed mindset and growth mindset. The fixed mindset believes ability is largely static. Intelligence is something you either possess or do not. Talent becomes identity. And because identity feels fragile, difficulty becomes threatening. Failure is no longer simply an event. It becomes a referendum on the self. The growth mindset interprets challenge differently. Ability is not viewed as fixed, but as something shaped through effort, strategy, practice, and time. Difficulty becomes part of construction, not proof of inadequacy. This is why mindset is not merely positive thinking. It is not optimism. It is interpretation. And interpretation quietly shapes behavior. A person who believes struggle reveals limitation begins avoiding struggle. A person who believes struggle develops capacity remains engaged long enough to grow. Over time, those behaviors compound into identity itself. One of Dweck's most fascinating discoveries emerged through the psychology of praise. Researchers praised one group of children for intelligence. "You are so smart." Another group was praised for process, effort, persistence, strategy. At first, both groups performed similarly. But the moment difficulty increased, something extraordinary happened psychologically. The children praised for intelligence began avoiding challenge. Why? Because challenge threatened identity. If intelligence is who you are, then struggle becomes dangerous. Difficulty risks exposing the possibility that you may not be as naturally gifted as you hoped. But the children praised for effort behaved differently. They remained engaged longer, recovered from setbacks faster, experimented more freely. Because effort did not threaten identity, it strengthened it. This insight extends far beyond childhood. Many adults are still unconsciously protecting identities built decades earlier. The intelligent one, the talented one, the naturally capable one. And so they avoid situations where incompetence might temporarily appear. Not because they dislike growth, but because they fear humiliation. The fixed mindset is not driven primarily by laziness. It is driven by self-protection. Modern life intensifies this psychological pressure enormously. For most of human history, failure was relatively private, temporary, local. Today, human beings exist inside systems that continuously display the polished outcomes of others while concealing the slow, awkward process required to create them. You do not merely witness achievement anymore. You witness performance, curated certainty, edited success. And after enough exposure, the mind begins drawing dangerous conclusions. Everyone else seems naturally competent. Everyone else appears ahead. Everyone else looks finished. Meanwhile, your own life feels unfinished internally, confused, uncertain, slow. And something subtle begins happening psychologically. Difficulty stops feeling developmental. It starts feeling personal. You close the app feeling slightly diminished, not shattered, just quietly smaller than before. And perhaps repeated thousands of times, that feeling slowly becomes identity. The fixed mindset thrives inside comparison culture, because comparison constantly reinforces the fear that your current limitations represent permanent truth. Beneath behavior lives narration, a quiet internal voice interpreting experience continuously. Dweck discovered that mindset operates largely through this narration. The fixed mindset produces stories that gradually harden into certainty. I always fail at things like this. Other people are naturally better at this. I am simply not that kind of person. These thoughts rarely sound dramatic. Most arrive softly, reasonably, almost invisibly. But repeated often enough, they begin shaping the boundaries of what feels psychologically possible. Which risks feel survivable? Which futures feel available? Which ambitions feel emotionally safe enough to attempt? And modern digital environments amplify these narratives constantly. Not because technology itself is evil, but because emotional reaction sustains engagement. And few emotions sustain engagement more effectively than inadequacy. The algorithm rarely rewards peace. It rewards agitation, comparison, urgency, emotional stimulation. And over time, external comparison slowly becomes internal narration. The voice judging you begins sounding like your own. The fixed mindset does not primarily create failure, it creates avoidance. If challenge threatens identity, then avoiding challenge becomes psychologically logical. People begin avoiding difficulty, uncertainty, embarrassment, exposure, vulnerability. Not because they do not care about growth, but because growth requires temporary incompetence. Dweck understood something many people resist emotionally. Growth requires being bad at something first. It requires confusion, awkwardness, the visible discomfort of becoming. And modern culture increasingly makes this difficult, because social media transformed the process of becoming into public performance. The learning curve can now feel permanently visible, and so people hesitate, not because they lack ambition, but because they fear humiliation. They fear appearing unfinished. But the growth mindset is not the belief that you are already extraordinary. It is the belief that human beings remain capable of development. Dweck's research also aligns profoundly with what neuroscience now understands about neuroplasticity. The brain changes through repeated effort. Mistakes activate learning. Difficulty strengthens pathways. Challenge reshapes cognition. This means something deeply important. Struggle is not evidence that growth is failing. Struggle is often evidence that growth is occurring. The fixed mindset interprets friction as danger. The growth mindset interprets friction as adaptation. And perhaps this changes the emotional meaning of difficulty entirely. Because if challenge is developmental rather than humiliating, then discomfort stops becoming proof of inadequacy. It becomes evidence that the mind is stretching beyond previous limits. Not gracefully, not instantly, but gradually. Like muscles strengthening under resistance, human cognition develops through sustained engagement with difficulty. Dweck discovered the power of one small word: yet. I cannot do this, yet. I do not understand this, yet. I have not figured this out, yet. It is such a small adjustment linguistically, but psychologically, it keeps possibility alive. The word yet does not deny present difficulty. It simply refuses to transform temporary limitation into permanent identity. And perhaps modern culture struggles deeply with this idea, because digital life rewards immediacy, immediate performance, immediate mastery, immediate certainty. But human growth has never operated at digital speed. Competence develops slowly. Identity develops slowly. Understanding develops slowly. The brain builds itself incrementally through repetition, correction, persistence, return. The word yet protects the future from the conclusions of the present. And perhaps one of the most radical acts in modern life is allowing yourself to remain unfinished without interpreting that unfinishedness as failure. Growth mindset is not merely a philosophy, it is a relationship with difficulty. One relationship says difficulty means stop. The other says difficulty means adaptation is occurring. That distinction quietly reshapes everything. Learning, creativity, resilience, confidence, transformation. Because over time, human beings become shaped less by talent itself than by the meaning they attach to challenge. A person who interprets difficulty as humiliation withdraws from growth. A person who interprets difficulty as development stays engaged long enough for change to emerge. And perhaps this is why Dweck's work remains so psychologically powerful. It explains why so many people become trapped inside identities they never consciously chose. Not because growth was impossible, but because difficulty was interpreted incorrectly for so long that protection slowly replaced possibility. Return now to the beginning. The quiet room, the glowing screen, the exhausted person still scrolling, still comparing, still calculating the distance between their current life and the lives unfolding endlessly before them. Perhaps they are not lazy. Perhaps they are not incapable. Perhaps they have simply lived too long inside environments teaching them to interpret struggle as evidence of inadequacy rather than evidence of becoming. Carol Dweck's research points towards something profoundly hopeful. Human beings are not fixed versions of themselves. The mind remains adaptable. Identity remains unfinished. Growth remains possible. But only if difficulty is interpreted differently. Not as humiliation, not as exposure, not as proof that you are permanently limited, but as part of the slow construction through which human beings gradually become more capable than they once were. Growth requires something difficult emotionally. The willingness to be a beginner again, to feel awkward, to feel uncertain, to struggle visibly with something unfamiliar without collapsing into shame. Because every meaningful skill once felt unnatural in the beginning. Every confident person was once inexperienced. Every capable mind once moved slowly through confusion. Perhaps growth has always looked less like certainty and more like the willingness to remain a student while the ego demands mastery immediately. And maybe this is what the growth mindset truly offers. Not endless confidence, not permanent optimism, not the illusion that difficulty disappears, but a different relationship with difficulty itself. A relationship in which confusion is no longer interpreted as failure. A relationship in which effort is no longer evidence of inadequacy. A relationship in which unfinishedness is no longer something to hide. Because the student of life understands something deeply important. Human beings are not meant to arrive fully formed. They are shaped slowly, through repetition, attention, mistakes, reflection, persistence. Through the quiet process of becoming more aware than they were before. One challenge faced honestly, one failure interpreted differently, one moment of difficulty endured without turning against yourself internally. That is how growth begins. And perhaps in a world obsessed with appearing complete, the willingness to remain unfinished may become one of the deepest forms of psychological freedom left.